Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Warning! This video is a candid exploration of the Dune universe using both Frank and Brian Herbert's novels. This video may also include discussions of violence, sexual situations, and drug use. By viewing beyond this point, you take responsibility for choosing to watch this video. All views expressed in this video are mine alone, and do not reflect any person or people, or any group or groups. Thank you, and please have a great day.
Hello and welcome to this video. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is having fun. And I hope the universe is treating you fairly. Today's video, I am going to be discussing my interpretations of the Dune Universe. It's going to be mainly based on the original 6 books by Frank Herbert. There's going to be a little bit of stuff coming in from the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson novels that were written afterward. I need to get something out up front. Probably do this at the beginning of each of the videos. The Brian Herbert novels, the sequels and prequels that he did, aren't bad. They're not bad. He's not a bad writer. His problem is he's not a good writer. Even if you contrast him to his contemporaries, he's still a middle-of-the-road writer. He's kind of like Terry Brooks. Not a bad writer, just not somebody I'm going to go after out of my way to read. But then you take his mediocrity as a writer and you compound that with the abilities of his father, which makes him look a whole lot worse than he really is. So yeah, and in his novels, he has some really good ideas. He just doesn't have the writing skill to pull those ideas off. I've read things he's done. I've watched interviews with him. The man, Brian Herbert, is not dumb. He's not stupid. He's not quintessentially a dullard. He's actually fairly intelligent. It's just his brain isn't wired for writing. Like I said, I've enjoyed his stuff. Like I said, it's not something I'm going to go out of my way to go buy. If it's at the used bookstore at a good price, I'll pick it up. If I can get it on Audible for a credit, I'm not spending any of my own money, I'll get it and listen to it. But that's my personal view on Brian Herbert and his ability to write in this universe. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this first video. We're going to start at the beginning, because the beginning is always a tumultuous time. In the Dune universe, about, well, okay, let me do something. In the Dune universe, you have BG, which is before the Spacing Guild. Wasn't Auto and BS, but before the Spacing Guild. Then you have AG after the Spacing Guild. The establishment of the guild navigators, the guild steersmen, and stuff like that. That is generally looked at in the Dune universe as year 1, and everything before that is BG, and everything afterward is AG. So we'll start about 10,000 years BG, before the guild, which on our calendar, conveniently enough, falls into about 1965, when the first Dune book was written. It's during this time, during this 10,000 years, that man does things like computers, the internet, artificial intelligence, space stations, putting people on the moon, going out of our own solar system, so on, so forth, etc., ad nauseum, over 10,000 years. During this time period, man became very docile, very stupid, very trusting of their computers, and the computers took advantage of it. The AI and stuff took advantage of it. Then you had your first rebellion against the computers, and that kind of halfway went the right way, halfway didn't. Some of your human leaders actually had themselves downloaded to robot bodies because they wanted to live forever. They got greedy. They got full of themselves. Then, as time went on, they became more and more oppressive, more and more dangerous. You had the Butlerian Jihad, or the Butlerian Revolt. Serena Butler was murdered by one of the AI robots. She wasn't murdered, her son was. Then she started organizing, getting, people together. Then you had the overthrow and destruction of the thinking machines on planet Corin. The Butler family and most of the extensions off of it adopted the name Carino, except the Harkonnen. The Harkonnens were not allowed to change their name because it was perceived and hammered home, justly or unjustly. It's from a certain point of view, we fall into that logic that the Harkonnens, the progenitor of the Harkonnens, I can't think of his name right offhand, was a coward because he felt that the preservation of human life was more than was more of a value than just sacrificing millions of people over and over again to bring the machines down, and he was branded a coward. Like I said, it's the final battle. Yes, millions. I think, depending on what you read and what source you go by, anywhere from a whole bunch of millions to like 1 or 2 billion humans were killed in that battle, just slaughtered. The thinking robots were destroyed. And what arose out of that was you had your tripod of power, which was your spacing guild, the imperial family, the Carrinos, formerly the Butlers, and the Landsrad, the greater and lesser houses. The greater houses served kind of like a senate, where the lower houses was more of like a House of Representatives or House of Commons. Kind of like House of Lords, House of Commons would be a better way of describing it, a better way of putting it. And out of that trinity, you had another trinity formed. You had the Sisterhood, which eventually became the Bene Gesserit. You had the Bene Twi'leks that were into genetic engineering. Then we had the Ixians. The Talaxu, that's the actual proper pronunciation. I mispronounced it earlier. When I tried to pronounce it, it came out wrong. But the Talaxu were, and we haven't got much of those in the movies, because they're everything, all of the movies, the Lynch movie, the Villeneuve movies, the TV specials and stuff, never went far enough into the series where they played a role. Dune Prophecy gave us a look at both some simple Ixian technology, and the very end we get the Talaxu. Well, the Bene Gesserit, all females, with insane control of their bodies, just from being able to heal them, force themselves to heal faster if they get cut or wounded. They control the sex of any children they have. They can break poisons down in their body. They have the voice, the way it's described in the novels, you cannot portray that on screen, because the way they do it on screen, if you've watched Dune Prophecy or any of the Dune stuff, when they use the voice, when the Bene Gesserit use the voice, it's done in a way that you, the viewer, knows that you doing the voice. In the novels, it's described there's the only one that hears anything is the person that it's directed to, and it's done. Two people, you can have a room full of people, and person A and person B can be talking, and the Bene Gesserit is person A. Then you have whoever is some duke or baron or lord or somebody in person the Bene Gesserit could say something to person B, and person B hears it just like you hear me talking now. But person C, the one that they directed it at, follows whatever the subliminal order, whatever was in the voice. Like I said, you can't do that very well in a movie or television special or whatever, simply because the viewers don't know what's going on. If you're viewing it, and especially with the number of non-readers that are out in the universe, people who haven't read the series, and like I said, there's a ton of stuff to unpack, so these videos will be bouncing around timeline wise, so it's kind of crazy. But the Talaxu, the Bene Talaxu, they do like God level genetic design. They hate the Bene Gesserit. And they hate the Ixians. But they have cloned. They have clones, and in the Dune Universe, you have something what's called a Gola, where a clone is made from the living tissue of a living donor. The clone knows it's a clone. The clone knows most of the time they're the genetic donor. A Gola, on the other hand, is made from the genetic material of a corpse. The Talaxu can program the Gola any way they want. However, something traumatic, like programming the Gola to kill a loved one or something like that, will force the living memories, the memories of the donor of the genetic material, to become prominent. They know, then they have a sudden realization that what they are, how they get to relive how they died. You know, they remember everything all the way up to the point of birth. And it is crazy, just, you know, the augmentations to the human body that they've come up with, i.e. Desmond Hart and Dune Prophecy. He was made up for that show. That show is based loosely on Sisterhood of Dune, Mentats of Dune, and Navigators of Dune, which are all Brian Herbert books. They take some of the better ideas, they flesh them out a little bit better than they are in the books. They create some better plot devices, and you know, just kind of getting it all together, forming a good, coherent story. Plus, they're working with Villeneuve to ensure that the Dune Prophecy fits into his movies. Not necessarily the books, but Villeneuve's interpretation and his films. Which is kind of cool. Now the Ixians. they are shady. They are sketch as hell. The Ixians make stuff. They make and create stuff that is technically illegal. They make thinking machines, but they disguise them or undersell what they actually are, or they just straight up lie. Yeah, it's they are all three of these groups, the Bene Gesserit, Bene Tlaxu, and the Ixians. All three of these groups are sketch. At best, they're sketch. They're sketchy. Ooh, yeah. So yeah, that's that. So this is what the initial board looks like. This video is running a little bit long, so we'll go ahead and shorten it here, and we'll actually get into the first novel, probably the next video. We'll probably overlap with some of this and explain why certain things are done in a certain way in the Dune novels, and because of the stuff that happened before this, 10,091 years before Paul Atreides was born, but 10,000 years after we're all dead. So yeah, this is gonna be some unpacking. So let me go ahead and we'll call this good here. Until next time, be a good human. Be good to other humans. Peace.